So it's now 12 days until Donald Trump takes office in the United States, and he's already saying some rather unusual things. He's saying that he wants Canada to become the 51st state of the Union. He's saying that he wants to take Greenland and the Panama Canal. And I just thought I'd sort of try and unpack for you what the motives behind such things would be at this point, what the advantages of doing these things for the United States. Canada being the 51st state of the Union, yeah, it probably would be very good for the United States, since a huge amount of oil comes from Canada. A huge amount of oil used in the United States comes from Canadian tar sands. The Canadians are able to put export tariffs on the oil coming through Canada into the United States. Greenland also has huge reserves of oil up in the Arctic Circle. So it does make quite good sense from a strategic standpoint to include Greenland in the United States and Canada in the United States. But I think Canada and Greenland probably have different ideas on this. And the Danish government, they probably very much want to keep Greenland for the reasons that I've outlined already, because of the oil up in the Arctic Circle. It'd be very good for Denmark to keep Greenland for that reason. Canada, I think, has no interest whatsoever in becoming part of the United States. And I think it's a very outlandish claim indeed that Trump should be proffering this idea that Canada should join the United States. As for the Panama Canal, I think that could be a flashpoint for war. Trump claims that China has taken over the Panama Canal. The extent to which that's true or not, I don't really know. I think it's highly likely actually that China does have or does exert significant control over the Panamese government, the Panamanian government, and that China, yeah, does exert a significant amount of control over the Panama Canal. But I think, yeah, that when Trump comes into office, it's very likely that we do see some sort of armed conflict over one of these regions or all of them. If Trump gets his way, of course, and if he's not reined in by, sort of sager heads, sort of offering him advice to turn away from these territorial ambitions. But the territorial ambitions themselves are very telling of his politics. This is very reactionary 19th century imperialist style politics. This is very much the sort of thing that we could expect from Vladimir Putin. This is, very despotic demagoguery. This is really quite terrifying in a sense. If he gets his way on any of these things, it could be a calamity. There could be, wars breaking out between the United States and Denmark or Canada or Panama. And when it comes to the military capabilities of places like Canada, Denmark, and Panama, they don't have the same military capabilities as the United States. The United States probably does have still the most powerful military on earth, so it's very scary to see someone like Trump at the head of all this. It's very scary to see someone with kind of imperialist, almost ambitions taking over a country like the United States. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think that this talk could very well be a lot of hot air. I certainly hope it is a lot of hot air. I hope that he's reined in by Congress and people around him and his staff to prevent him from doing these sorts of things. But then again, we don't know what's going to happen. And after all, Trump is going to be in power for 4 years. And a lot can happen in 4 years. And he's got an inordinate amount of things to sort out, an inordinate amount of things he's promised to sort out. Notably, he's stated that he's going to sort out the problem in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, and get Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin around the negotiating table to try and sue for peace. And I really don't know what's going to happen on that front. Donald Trump has made the claim before that if he were in power, he would be able to sort that out within a day or something, or that it would never have happened if he were in office, that the war would never have happened. And I don't know about the truth of that so much. As ever with what Donald Trump says, you have to kind of take everything with very much a pinch of salt and sort of try and see the wood for the trees in a political sense that, this may just be babble and jabbering, and it may not really reflect any kind of consistent underlying logic there or rationality, and that it may well be just bluster very often with Trump. But no, I don't know what's going to happen. Somehow, I don't see Canada joining the United States. I don't see Canada becoming the 51st state of the Union. Um, I don't see. Well, then again, over Greenland and the Panama Canal, I really don't know what's going to happen. War could be on the table. Yes, very much. It could end up like that. The Panama Canal is hugely important for trade with the United States and the East. Um, Greenland has reserves of oil, so that could be very important for the United States and its GDP and so on. And yeah, it could be an interesting geopolitical sort of time. But a war between the United States and Denmark, it seems unthinkable, doesn't it? It seems like the sort of thing we could never really imagine happening. But then again, under Donald Trump, who knows what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anyone really knows what's going to happen. I think if people did know what's going to happen, they would say what's going to happen. But this is, yeah, very much a time when we're yet again going to have this loose cannon in the White House, in the Oval Office, dictating policy and acting very much like a dictator, and being very emblematic of the strongman politics of the 19th century, and doing goodness only knows what, really. And people voted for him because it's going to be good for the United States, apparently. Under Donald Trump last time, there were boom times in the United States. He brought taxes down, which is very favorable for a lot of people who own businesses. And for these sorts of reasons, and things like lowering the price of gasoline, that was the most talked about policy objective in the last election, in this election, the one that happened in 2024. Um, that was the biggest thing on people's minds. So yeah, I mean, securing Canadian tar sands, that would be a dream come true, I'm sure, for the United States government with Donald Trump at the helm, gaining control of those tar sands and that supply of crude oil, and yet lowering the price of gasoline that way. And likewise with Greenland and those supplies of those like little drips of oil really up in the Arctic Circle. If they can get a claim over those before Russia gets the ability to mine and extract that oil, then that could be, yeah, beneficial for things like the price of gasoline in the States. But I think yet again, time will tell. Donald Trump isn't yet in office. Donald Trump would say that he'd have the Ukraine war sorted out before he got into office. And, the clock is ticking, right? We've got 12 days to go until he gets into power again. And I somehow don't suspect that the war in Ukraine is going to end in the next 12 days. Or perhaps it will. I mean, anything seems to be happening at this point in politics. I mean, it seems every day there's some new uh, terror on the horizon or some new great surprise that seems to happen um, with all this geopolitical stuff. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see. And but I don't see the Ukraine war dying down at any point soon. I imagine that's going to be a very long, protracted thing. Even if there's peace, I don't know what the Ukrainians are going to have to concede for in terms of a peace agreement for that to happen. Perhaps they're going to have to cede the Donbass region, and if they cede the Donbass region, that'll become part of Putin's police state. And if that happens, there could be ongoing fighting, there could be insurrections within the Donbass, there could still be a kind of a very muted conflict going on there for many years in the future. I don't really know what's going to happen on that front either, but it could be something along those lines. But then again, I don't see Putin necessarily backing down, and I don't believe that Donald Trump has nearly the sort of influence over Vladimir Putin that he believes he does. Um, yeah, I don't think that that friendship or that comradeship between Putin and Trump is necessarily as strong as Trump thinks it is, and I think that Putin would still very much have the upper hand in negotiations on that front, and would still be pushing to sequester Ukraine in its entirety. Yet again, for the natural resources in Ukraine, the coal, gas, uranium, the agricultural output of Ukraine, which is highly significant from a strategic perspective, from a Russian perspective. This was very, very significant during the days of the Soviet Union. This breadbasket of Russia, which is what Ukraine is. This is what led Stalin to be so bent on sequestering Ukraine, and he did manage that during the Second World War, leading to, or was it before the Second World War, sort of in 1933 and 1934, was it? Leading to the Holodomor, the Holocaust by starvation, which tragically swept through Ukraine when the Russians annexed their grain supplies to feed the Red Army. And yes, we could imagine something like that happening at an extreme, and this is why the Ukrainians are fighting so bitterly against the Russians to prevent this sort of thing from happening again. But yes, I think these territorial ambitions of Trump, these might be lunatic policies. It might be real fantasy, real sort of oligarchical, egomaniacal, dictatorial fantasy, almost very much like Putin, very much in the style of a 19th century dictator, or a 20 or a dictator plucked out of the early 20th century. One might think of Hitler almost with these sorts of things, these sorts of proposals, but that might be a little bit extreme. No one likes a reductio ad Hitlerum, but yes, still, I don't know what's going to happen, so I can't really, because I can't predict what Donald Trump will do. I can't predict how the extent to which he'll be reined in by the people around him. I can just keep my fingers crossed and hope that saner heads prevail, and that there isn't this annexation of foreign territory such as Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal. And I think that's all we can do at the moment, and just keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best, and hope that it doesn't all end in calamity like it very well could if he's allowed to do what he wants. But yeah, so we're going to have to very much wait and see on that front. And as for the Ukraine situation, I very much doubt that Donald Trump has the negotiating power that he believes he does. I think he has the power to make things very difficult for Ukraine going forwards. If he blocks off supplies of money and weapons to Ukraine, it could be a deeply problematic situation for them. It could cause them to start making territorial losses in the war, and it could damage their position very much against the Russians, which doesn't need to happen. And yeah, going forward, I hope that saner heads do prevail, and I hope that this bluster and rhetoric of Donald Trump doesn't lead to anything like another conflict breaking out with the United States engaged in war with another country. And I hope that the Ukraine war does get sorted out peacefully in the end. But then again, I don't know how that's going to come about without a regime change in Russia. But that might be a topic for another video, and I think I've said about enough. It's gone on for long enough. So thank you very much for watching. I love you lots. Bye bye bye. I'll see you soon.